はい、皆様ご聴講ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. This is RRI International Symposium. This is session 2 and day 2 of the symposium. I'm Nonaka from Hitachi. I will be serving as an MC today. Let us begin the program.
で、本日はセッション2でマニファクチャリングポリシー。
This is session 2 and the title is Manufacturing Policy in the World of Post-COVID-19. We will have the presentations and panel discussion on this theme. Today we have 4 panelists. We have Dr. Anderl from Germany, Dr. Kimura from Japan, Dr. Grease from Germany, and Mr. Iwamoto from Japan. This is the agenda for today's program. First, the 4 presenters will be making these presentations and spending the last 1 hour, including myself, we will be having a panel discussion. Before we begin the program, I would like to make a request on the questions from the audience. If you would like to ask questions to the panelists, please use the question link on the YouTube screen and post your questions. Now, let's begin the presentations. First, manufacturing and COVID-19 situation in countries and the importance of international collaboration. I would like to first make a presentation on this topic using the video. Please take a look.
グローバルに広がる企業のバリューチェーンにおいては、生産拠点の最適配置や物流の効率化など、経営効率の最大化がますます重要になっています。一方で、新型コロナウイルスや貿易摩擦、地震などの災害により、バリューチェーンが寸断される事態が頻発しています。企業活動には、このような状況から早期に復旧するレジリエンスの向上が新たな価値として求められています。例えば、デザインから生地製造、縫製、販売の水平分業化が進み、拠点がグローバルに展開しているアパレル業界ではどうでしょうか。疫病などにより一部の工場が閉鎖することで、バリューチェーンの寸断が発生した場合、代替工場を探し出し、バリューチェーンを迅速に復旧させる必要があります。しかし、代替工場において生産を始めるためには、その安全性や品質、納期、価格、環境負荷、運転資金などの確認と交渉から、作業手順の作成、調達、製造、物流、販売の計画の連携など、多くの準備を伴い、バリューチェーン復旧には時間がかかります。その結果、必要なものの供給がストップする事態が起こり得ます。このような問題に対して、日立のデジタル技術を活用したバリューチェーンアズアサービスが、バリューチェーンを効率的に復旧し、企業活動のレジリエンス向上に貢献します。例えば、IoT で収集した工場の業務データから品質や納期の安定性、確かな力を持つ最良の企業をマッチングします。さらに、交渉案を提示することで、これまで時間を要していた契約交渉の迅速化に貢献します。また、事業継続性を評価することで、金融機関との融資関係の構築に貢献します。作業手順の作成の課題に対しては、製品設計情報に基づくデジタルレシピ生成技術により、作業手順を自動作成し、生産立ち上げの迅速化に貢献します。 計画連携の課題に対しては、最終顧客の需要に応じた一貫した計画をクラウド上で立案、提供することで、計画システムの立ち上げ期間を大幅に短縮。さらに、計画の最適化により、以前よりも効率的なバリューチェーン運営を可能にします。日立はバリューチェーンアズアサービスを通じて、お客様のバリューチェーンに経営効率の最大化とレジリエンスの向上を提供し、必要なものが必要な人に安定して届く社会の実現に貢献してまいります。
こういった COVID-19 におけるものづくりの問題に
Amidst COVID-19, there are issues related to manufacturing, and we want to think about these issues. The overarching question that we would like to discuss in the session is shown on the screen. What should Germany and Japan do as next actions to shape the affluent world after the COVID-19 pandemic? That is what we would like to discuss. So thank you. And now I would like to invite Professor Anderl to speak on the theme of the role of Industry 4.0 in the post-COVID-19 era. Professor Anderl, the floor is yours.
So thank you very much, Mr. Nonaka, for this nice introduction. And I would like to give my presentation on the role of our initiative, Industrie 4.0, in the post-COVID-19 era. So I've structured my presentation into 5 parts. After the introduction, I will briefly give an insight into the Industrie 4.0 vision and our research strategy. Then I will explain our research policy. I will talk about current trends, and I will come to a conclusion. So let me draw your attention on what we call German HighTech strategy, which was established in about 10 years ago. And this HighTech strategy has first defined a strategic project called Industrie 4.0. This project was so successful that the industry decided to take over the initiative and implement Industrie 4.0 in the industrial environment. So here, the platform Industrie 4.0 has created, first as a platform defined by the associations, the industrial associations in Germany, representing machinery industry, electrical and electronics industry, and also the information and communication technology industry. Then we become aware quite fast that the application of Industrie 4.0 is much broader, and therefore the second platform, Industrie 4.0, has been defined, where all the industrial branches are coming together. A second strategic project was called Smart Service World, which is based on the definition and the usage of internet-based services. The third strategic project was called Autonomous Systems, and this has led to the definition of another platform called the Platform for Artificial Intelligence. And this is the whole scenario where we are working together today and where we are shaping the industrial future. So let me briefly give you an insight into what's happening with respect to COVID-19 in Germany. It's really a challenge. The COVID-19 virus is highly infectious. Protection approaches and methods and protection methods are strongly required. And here I have selected 2 slides. One slide shows the increase of the number of test cases to identify infected people. And it starts in week 10, which is March this year, and it ends last week in October. And you see the increase was strongly increasing from about nearly 200,000 tests a week to today about more than 1 million tests a week. And in the second slide, you see the percentage of positive tests identified. This is the red line, and the number of tests which is shown in the blue line. And what you see is that even if we have strongly increased our tests, we still are at a rate of about 1.8% of positive identified infected people today. So the conclusion here is test strategies need to be increased even more to identify infections. What do we know today? The infectious virus protection methods in Germany follow the so-called AHA rules. What means AHA? AHA stands for Abstand, which means distance. H stands for hygiene. And the second A stands for Alltagsmaske, which is a mask or a mouth and nose protection. Well, this is very important for our German society, that all of us are following these AHA rules. Now, what is the state of analysis? This was a statement from last week of our Federal Ministry of Health. We are strongly faced with severe problems because many people still ignore the AHA rules. So we have crowded events, family celebrations with many participants, and also celebrating parties with many participants ignoring the AHA rules. However, the good news is we don't have identified much problems in cases where the AHA rules are respected. And this aims at shopping. We nearly have no problems with shopping, public transportation, as well as going for lunch or dining. So what should we learn? Infection protection is very important, and also testing. Then, of course, we have to identify infections, and we have to track and trace or even backtrace the infection sources. And we are using methods of encapsulation and prevention. So how can Industry 4.0 help? So first, let me give a brief insight into our Industry 4.0 vision. The Industry 4.0 vision is defined, and you can easily access this guideline for the Industry 4.0 vision 2030, which defines 3 important pillars. This is autonomy, consisting of technology development, security, and also digital infrastructure. Then interoperability, for instance, regulatory frameworks, but also standards, and also decentralized systems. And the third pillar is dealing with sustainability, in particular with respect to new working environments, but also the social participation. So our platform Industry 4.0 is structured into 6 working groups. They are listed here: reference architecture, standardizations and norms, technology and application scenarios, security of network systems, legal framework, work and education, as well as training, and digital business models for Industry 4.0. And what is very important is that in particular, the working group 6 has developed a guideline, and this guideline aims at the at mastering the impact of Corona in the German industry. You can easily access this publication through our platform. So, with respect to research, the Research Council has published, in particular, two very important publications. The first one is the so-called Memorandum for a More Agile and Flexible Innovation System in Germany. So the impact is on speeding up, creating more flexibility, creating more agility, creating more robustness, taking into account cultural change, user orientation, and new working methods. And this has been implemented by defining new spaces, which means new forms of research infrastructure, new formats, in particular with respect to interdisciplinary collaboration, and new indicators, which means creating new criteria to evaluate applied research. And this is the publication, which is, of course, available in English, and you can also easily access it. Here is the QR code for accessing this publication. And the second important publication of the Research Council is called the Thematic Fields of Industry 4.0. And this is more or less the upcoming research profile. And this consists of four pillars. The first one is called Economical and Value Creation Scenarios. The second one, Prospective Technological Trends. The third one, Methodologies and Tools. And the fourth one, Work and Society. And here's also the publication which goes pretty much into detail and which defines our new research strategy to further develop the Industry 4.0 technology. Now, let me give a brief insight into the research policy. There are 6 important approaches. First one says innovation drives welfare. For instance, using Industry 4.0, IIoT, also in the combination with artificial intelligence methods. The second one aims at the society drives the innovation. And we are faced with societal movements like Fridays for Future, like gender equity, or work-life balance. Then we are faced with political challenges, such as trade conflicts, Brexit, digitalization, and legislation. Of course, a very important trend is the demographic trend. The aging society is a problem in Germany, and we have to master this challenge. Then we are also faced with migration issues and with pandemic issues. We are faced with business shutdown, travel restrictions, uncertain supply chains, and so forth, so on. So this leads us to an agile agenda setting. This has been performed by a collaboration between politics, industry, and science. For instance, by establishing dialogues like Innovation Dialogue, Leaders Dialogue, and Digitalization Summit, but also taking into account joint research initiatives like joint research programs, appropriate participation of small and medium-sized enterprises, and the integration of fundamental and applied research. But also international collaboration have a very high value, such as collaborations within the European Union, bilateral collaborations, for instance, between Germany and Japan, for instance, by establishing also a Vice Minister Summit and establishing research projects. We call it 2+2 projects. 2+2 means in each country a scientific organization, for instance, a university and an enterprise, are participating from each country. So the current trends, I recall the 2030 vision for Industry 4.0. And now let me give you a deep insight into each of these 3 pillars. With respect to autonomy, a strong initiative is Gaia X, which is the creation of a sovereign European data space. Then interoperability with respect to standardization, for instance, based on the open platform communication unified architecture, or abbreviated OPC UA, and environmental soundness. So in the Research Council, we have also published quite a number of very important research results, like with respect to the acceptance of Industry 4.0, the demand and application-driven support of small and medium-sized enterprises, the transformation ability of factories and production networks, engineering of smart products and services, also the Industry 4.0 application map and Industry 4.0 and law. And what is coming next is the research result with respect to AI for supporting SMEs, new simulation approaches of smart Industry 4.0 applications, but very important for the post-COVID-19 era, resilience analysis of industrial enterprises in the context of COVID-19, as well as analysis of value-added chains in the context of infection crisis. So the industrial resilience is based on a provisional pandemic action plan, which also defines 3 phases: pre-pandemic, pandemic, and post-pandemic phases. And they are based on the recommendations of the World Health Organization. And they are also listed here, also with a link to the publication. Now, what are the recommendations? Enterprise should become more agile and flexible. We need to establish more mobile working environments or remote working environments, home office integration in enterprise environments. With respect to product development, the product service systems are becoming more and more important. Then the transformation abilities for production and new added value networks. So let me come to the conclusion. New strategies are required to strengthen industrial competitiveness in the post-COVID-19 era. It's very important. We need new strategies. Sustainability and resilience play a major role for future industrial success. A significant impact is expected with respect to new added value and supply chains. And furthermore, major changes of working environments and working styles are expected. That's also really a challenge. And the contribution of Industry 4.0 technologies aim at profitability, sustainability, and resilience. So thank you very much for your attention, and I will be happy to join the panel later.
アンダール先生。
Thank you.
アンダール先生、大変ありがとうございました。
Dr. Anderl, thank you very much. The effort on Industry 4.0 and the pandemic, you talked about the relation between the two, and it was very interesting. Thank you. The next speaker is a Japanese speaker. Dr. Kimura will make a presentation. The title of the presentation is Designing Resilient Manufacturing with Versatile Human Interaction in Post-COVID-19 Environment. Dr. Kimura, the floor is yours. Thank you for the introduction. As introduced, Due to COVID-19, the situation surrounding the manufacturing has been drastically changing, and therefore it is required to achieve a resilient production that can adapt to changes. Let us think about how to achieve such resilient production that allows diverse people to exert their potentials. As Dr. Anderl said, in the COVID-19, the regulations, policies, society, environmental issues. From these various perspectives, we need to have discussion. But in my talk, I will focus on the technical platform and technology capabilities. First of all, I will talk about the important aspects of production practice in the world of post-COVID-19, and then I will introduce a model-based approach. And then we will think about the importance of roles that people should play. Then in closing, I will argue what actions we should take next. First, about the basic ideas. It is said that the manufacturing is already mature. However, if we look at countries like developing countries, we cannot say that the quality of life is now on the satisfactory level globally. It is required to improve QOL, especially in developing and emerging countries. And in order to do so, we need to enhance resource productivity and add more value to production. Advanced manufacturing is a critically important enabler for improving social infrastructure. And the following points of view are also very important. To use resources, including human resources, more efficiently. And it is also important to be aware that the global resources are unevenly distributed in the world, so we must optimize global life cycle network of resources. And from now on, I am going to talk about how to address these challenges. COVID-19 has further exacerbated those aforementioned challenges due to unforeseen and disruptive changes in manufacturing. And what solves these challenges is so-called digitalization, or a comprehensive process transformation and a shift from as is to be through digitalization. To become resilient and adapt to changes flexibly, digitalization of manufacturing will be important. And here we will look at the following three aspects. There are many other aspects, but these are the three aspects we will focus on today. First, dynamic decoupling and reintegration of cyber and physical worlds. And second is to resolve the boundary of traditional industries and creating new ones. And the third is to reassign diverse human resources to activities. And here we must consider various possibilities ranging from complete automation to autonomy with versatile human involvement. Let us look at model-based approach to address these challenges. Traditionally, in manufacturing, efficiency, added value, human centricity, and sustainability, these were sought after. In resilient manufacturing, in addition to these attributes, mitigation of risks arising from unforeseen changes, adaptability, flexibility, and agility will also be strongly required. And the fundamental technology to achieve all these is digitalization. And the resilience can be introduced based on the following processes. First is the business process innovation from as is to be, the business process transformation. The second is the digitalization of technologies and social environment. And implementation of business processes through flexible adaptation or flexible adaptation to a digitalized environment. And to achieve this, model-based approach is effective. And at the basis of that technology is CPS, or cyber physical system. In a narrow sense, CPS is the modeling of the physical world. But here, on top of that perspective, we will look at how business processes are designed in the physical world. This is a simple model. In traditional manufacturing, a business process and the physical object were tightly connected in one-to-one relation. It was very efficient, but it made it difficult to rearrange the business processes and the physical world quickly in case something went wrong. So in order to do this more flexibly, we need the model-based approach. And in model-based approach, so-called digital twin is created. In other words, the physical world model is built in a cyberspace. And through this model, business processes can be freely and flexibly designed, which lead to resilient manufacturing. And in the cyberspace, our activity model, it may be valuable in itself, but in order to use it more in the physical world, we must utilize that model in the cyberspace and the physical world. It means that the cyber object and the physical object needs to be closely connected. We don't have time to delve into the technology, but this chart shows the gist of that. The modeling of physical world means meticulous modeling of machine tools, for example, enabling functional verification through simulation. There are many outstanding challenges still, but at the same time, a slew of developments which can be applied. And also, there are many outcomes from business process designs. And in order to use this more effectively, the modularization and the standardization are some things that we need to focus on in the future. The business process model and the physical model should be closely connected, and that is called mapping. And mapping has been created using various performance indices. But when we think about resilience, the index must be on the enhancement of resilience. And here we call it design for resilience. And design for X or R&D efforts pursuing certain design goals are underway in many places. And based on results of these efforts, we hope that the design for resilience will further develop in the future. And when we expand the model-based approach, then we can also create the multi-layer model. As you can see in this chart, manufacturing has been essential and at the center of transportation, energy, urban environment, health and welfare, agriculture, and many individual industries. However, not enough linkage has been there. So to build resilient industries, interoperability among industries will have to be enhanced to create new industrial structures. And it will be critically important to do so. And for this, flexible linkage between models of physical objects and business processes will be indispensable. And this semantic model means that all of these individual models will be linked and be operated in an interoperable manner. Now let's look at human roles in resilient manufacturing. The characterization of human roles is mandatory in the model-based approach to manufacturing. And here we look at these aspects. First, humans are, of course, important resources in manufacturing. And tasks which do not require high-level capabilities of humans should be automated. Having said that, we have to be particularly careful about the fact that even if these tasks may be routine work for humans, they may not necessarily be easily automated, and I'll talk about that later. And we must fully consider which tasks essentially need to be carried out by humans, and it is not always obvious. And since people are diverse, there's no generalized solution to a relationship between humans and machines, and based on individual characteristics and environment, human roles must be designed appropriately, and this is why model-based approach is effective here. And as for human-machine interaction, many technologies, including AR and VR, are available. But human roles must be decided not only based on feasibility and economics, but also diversity of humans. And this is the design concept of human roles in model-based approach. Resources in the physical world, such as humans and machines, are mapped to cyberspace to run business process network there. And this mapping has conventionally been made based on past records or simply from cost perspective and not well thought out. To truly enhance resilience and improve QoL by accommodating human diversity, we must free ourselves from boundaries of traditional mindset and create rational designs through model-based approach. Simple tasks which humans don't exactly want to do, such as transporting cartons, are not automated if we only look at the cost aspect. Conversely, some of those apparently intelligent tasks that humans want to be engaged in may be automated by AI. So we must have a bird's-eye view of the entire system. If we only look at the cost aspect, then the system may not be suitable to diverse people. We have to look at the entire system and then design rational and model-based human interaction from a human's perspective. I don't have time to go into the detail. However, I would like to show you one example of such researches in Japan. But before doing so, I have talked about this concept so far, but I would like to say that there are many researches and development activities are ongoing. And these activities, however, are basic research and development, which will be supporting the future society. So we must keep in mind that the concept that I talked about will not be materialized in a short term and will require continuous effort for a long term. On the other hand, to confirm the effectiveness of researches, social implementation must be attempted in an agile and iterative manner. So we must carry out basic researches while iterating such social implementation because we don't know what is the best solution. Having said that, the mindset of people who are particular about traditional methods cannot easily be changed. So the key to success is to find how to change such mindset. This is an example of basic research, a conceptual diagram of so-called digital triplet proposed by Professor Yasushi Umeda of the University of Tokyo. In digital triplet, intelligent activity world is added to so-called digital twin. The business process network is equivalent to this intelligent activity world in digital triplet. Intelligent activity world. Here, various processes are run, and this chart shows how engineering activities which have not been digitalized sufficiently can be acquired by cyberspace. I do not have time to introduce details, but I'll just say that researches are underway to link the model of physical objects to replace tasks led by humans based on tacit knowledge with model-based tasks. I apologize, it's not on slideshow mode. Sorry about that. So I expect results from these researches, and I would like to summarize my presentation. Many important technologies for new manufacturing are already available or being developed. Of course, more development efforts are required, but the problem is that available technologies are not fully utilized. And technologies can be a common infrastructure to be shared by all. But how to use technologies must be determined by visions and intentions of individuals, societies, and countries. They must make decisions themselves. Also, we must choose new manufacturing paradigm and design one ourselves. And even if specific designs and social implementation practice may differ, it is critically important that technology platform is shared and international collaboration is enabled. To summarize, the course of future of manufacturing, including resilient manufacturing, is not determined by technologies alone. Technologies do open up various future possibilities for manufacturing, but not all the scenarios are desirable. Therefore, we must keep in mind that the future manufacturing must be designed with our own visions and intentions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Kimura. So first of all, mindset is important, and also model-based design in manufacturing. As you have said, it has been modularized from the past, but in the digital society, the society itself and people and machine interaction, this also needs model-based design. I believe that is the point that you have made. That was very interesting. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next presentation. From Germany, we have Professor Thomas Gries to talk about survival through innovation, understanding COVID-19 as an opportunity rather than a threat. So, Dr. Gries, please, the floor is yours. Doctor, please unmute your mic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your kind introduction. I will now show you some perspective for using the crisis as an opportunity. COVID-19, of course, is a pandemic with a massive economical impact, and we are still on looking for the statistic. What does it mean? But it also shows, beside the figures, that also the behavior has changed. For example, in the beginning of the crisis in Germany, consumer behaved not logical, to say it in a modest way. So, for example, they, although COVID does not influence your digestion, so they bought hilarious amounts of toilet paper, for example. Why? So this shows that consumers are not behaving rational in any means. And also there was a strong trend towards home working. I think everybody knows of us. And is in the evening tired when you have 10 or 12 video conferences. And it must be said, of course, some things go better with that. But also it must be said, when I look for the key performance indicators of our institute, for example, work which could be done more efficient at home, for example, writing publications, does not show a positive effect. So there is something missing in the social interaction at work. In our field, my institute is working on textiles, just to say not only apparel, but also technical textiles. But anyway, there was a big breakdown in sales figures. And what was the result is that the department stores went into an extreme discount battle, which of course showed a double negative effect. Low sales and low prices didn't work out to boost sales again. So there was a double negative effect on the sales turnover. And this clearly can be shown by figures. You have those figures also in the handout. I don't want to get through each of that, but especially in gastronomy, as well as in the cultural sector, we have a severe breakdown in the last half year, which is only slowly to recover. This is the sales, so what is the future turnover? But it also can be seen in other figures, for example, when it comes to investment and also to investment of consumers into long-term consumer goods like cars, and there is a strong decline in the confidence in economy. This leads also, of course, in a breakdown in sales, as I said, 40% and more. And as everybody who knows the mathematics of percentage knows, that to overcome 40% minus, you have to have a plus of more than 66%. And so the positive trend, which you can see here, has not yet compensated the decline in the beginning of the Corona crisis. This is just the sales of clothing, but for us, for example, as a researcher, it's also important to see what is the investment in research. For this year is not yet clear, but some sectors are very much in negative influence, for example, the automotive research and the aircraft research. Other sectors have improved, but it must be said that the industry, first of all, tries to survive and then tries to innovate. This is, of course, also very critical. And so you have a kind of effect, and the big question is, will there be a soon recovery like we had in the financial crisis 27 to 29, or will it be a long recover what we have 100 years ago in the Wall Street crash, by the way, which was also caused by the Spanish flu. And it, of course, Germany has taken many measures. Professor Anderl had mentioned that. So, for example, there was a short-time work support. There was also other measures towards industry, but there was also the an increase in research funding, for example, for personal protective equipment. And there was also some value-added tax reduction, which, by the way, did not show a real result. But anyway, so we took, the German government took the same measures we took 10 years ago, and now we have to see and to follow the statistic, not only the statistics upon COVID-19, but also about our economy. Will it recover or not? Which sector will recover, which will not? So if you ask people on the street, but also if you ask the entrepreneurs itself, they say we have to change something. So there is a big turbulence and it's wrong to make the same thing just quicker again. That's simple truth. But the question is, what else can we see in opinion polls? And what could be seen is that on the top list, beside the economical uncertainty, people think the future will be dominated by climate change. So we have to do something about bioeconomy. And it will be also that digitalization will definitely have a big impact, and also the digital infrastructure in Germany has to be improved. And the question now is, what can be done? And here you see some ideas. So typically for example, we consult companies. What could they change? What are opportunities? There are opportunities in products. So there is an increased demand for protection, personal protection, hygiene, and whatever. There is a need for social distancing solutions. There is also, as I said, a need for products with a clear lower environmental impact, so bio-inspired materials. But when you then look for the production, there is a trend towards 3D technologies, basically because you want to produce more individual without lower formwork costs. There's a production on short demand. And there's also a tendency to think about onshoring. And of course, onshoring means higher cost. So you have to cope with that by a different way of value creation, either through platforms to digital value chains, and of course, taking the consumer as a part of the value chain. I will give you some examples for that. And the big question remaining is, especially for today, but not only for the Today conference, but in general, how can digitalization play a role in this change? In the past, Industrie 4.0, a frame which was developed in Germany, and you have heard about the very developed infrastructure and networks we have in Germany. But the main focus, if you talk to people from production technology, which are, that industry was very much manufacturing oriented and very much lean manufacturing driven. So you want to be more efficient. And everything, all the technology and means of digitalization you took to be even more efficient. My belief is that COVID-19 lead to a change. So the future shall be consumer-driven manufacturing innovation, and digitalization, of course, is important because it's facilitate to do this. And I will give you some examples starting from basically the Internet of Production and Industry 4.0. I will give you some examples, Model Factory, Work 4.0, but then I will end with those best practice experience for consumer-driven digitalization. When it comes to manufacturing, Aachen is definitely one place to be in Germany. Aachen University is the #1 technical university in Germany. At the backup, you will have some slides in a handout. I don't want to go too much deep in this, but also our strong root is in manufacturing. So for example, just one example, we have a so-called cluster of excellence. This is the largest Industry 4.0 oriented research cluster worldwide. More than 500 researchers are working on the Internet of Production. Researchers for all domains of disciplines, and our institute is a part of it. And based on this network, one result was that very early, we had in Aachen a model factory for Industry 4.0. By the way, it was the first model factory for Industry 4.0 in Germany. And we run this model factory together with McKinsey and other partners. So it's not only a showcase for Industry 4.0, but also for open innovation. And this is now running for 5 years. But as I said, it started very much manufacturing oriented and lean oriented. Very typically in German is that complementary to Asia, where the focus on smart factory and so on is very much technology driven. In Germany, we have also the focus of dealing Industry 4.0 very much user driven. So there is a framework and a phrase called Work 4.0. And here we have a large research group how to support an average worker with digitalization to make his life easier and to overcome the lack of skilled work. So this is very typical German approach to Industry 4.0. Now let's slowly but surely move from manufacturing and a worker-focused Industry 4.0 to a consumer-focused digitalization. Some years ago, we had a very prominent project called Speed Factory. It's an example for a micro factory. So the consumer is designing his shoe and he gets, it is produced onshore. 4 years before Corona, we started that project. And through digitalization, it was possible to manufacturing a shoe onshore in Germany, cost efficient with a delivery time at roughly 2 days. In individual consumer shoe. And we went even further with our core partner Adidas. We developed the so-called store factory, which is the micro factory at its extremes. So you produce in the shop, so the consumer is involved in making his product, and then he decided the design and whatever, and then he starts the production with a press on the bottom, and of course also he has to pay at that moment, and then he can watch how his product is produced in the shop, and within 2.5 hours, or the real production time is less than 2 hours, he can see how his product is produced. Individual. And of course you need the equivalent production technology, for example, just to name digital printing, also additive manufacturing, because you want to avoid formwork costs, which cannot be, you cannot have individual formworks if you want to produce cost efficient. These are just 2 technologies. There are others in order to facilitate individual customized product. And we did this projects together with Frank Piller, a worldwide expert for mass customization. So there was always a combination between business model innovation, process innovation, and digitalization. Just to bring it to the bottom line, the way how to get and thrive on the crisis and use the opportunities is just to do it. Only if you start to invent new business model, then you will survive. And my bottom line is invent your new business model based on consumer orientation and use digitalization to facilitate production close to the market with higher value. And I think here the German-Japanese collaboration can really have a boost for that through our way of German engineering, especially in combination with the attitude in Japan, Kikubari, that you want to serve your customer and really looking for the customer needs. And I hope that this could be a starting point also for intensive Japanese-German collaboration on mass customization and microfactories. Thank you very much.
Greece 先生、ご発表ありがとうございました。
Dr. Greece, thank you very much for your presentation. So in Japan, we call it omotenashi or hospitality, and we must achieve that in manufacturing. And in Japan, we talk about customer experience-based digital transformation, CXDX.
Yeah.
And we discuss a lot about how to materialize that.
Yeah.
And Dr. Greece, I believe, talked about that right on. So in the panel discussion, we want to continue discussing this point. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm looking very much forward to. Thank you.
はい、次のご発表に移ります。
Let's move on to the next presentation. The next presentation is from Japan side. Once again, Mr. Iwamoto will make a presentation titled Transformation to New Digital Business Model. Mr. Iwamoto, the floor is yours.
私の資料は見えますか?
Can you see my screen? Not yet. I can see you though. So I have to share my screen. Yes, please.
Hi.
Now can you see my screen? Yes. And can you make it into a full screen? Or this is fine too? Yes. Okay, then I will go with this. The theme of my presentation is transformation to new digital business model. Due to COVID-19, sales are dropping and a lot of companies are having a hard time. And media have also covered these news, but at the same time, there are companies that are doing very well with sales increasing. So these companies are not saying anything now, but actually there are many companies that are doing very well. For example, the face masks. Sharp, a Japanese company, is a home appliance manufacturer, but Sharp is selling face masks. It's selling very well. And then Sharp employees are saying that the biggest top seller in the company are actually face masks, even though they are home appliance manufacturers. So employees are saying that these days. And these are some coverage by media and newspaper. Looking at the first one on September 7th, the infection risks are increasing in factories. Therefore, demand for robots that can work side by side with humans is increasing. And Fanuc, a Japanese company, decided to increase the production of robots by 3 times. So due to COVID-19, as I said, there are companies that are enjoying increase of sales. And this is another article. We have to go contactless, and to achieve that, new market is being cultivated in order to achieve contactless world. Usually, markets change slowly, so manufacturers can take time to stop the production of low-performing products, and they can shift to well-selling products slowly. But due to the shock in the society, they have to shift and change the market rapidly. However, in each of the cases, what they have to do is the same. They still have to respond to the market demand. So just like the COVID-19, these large social shocks occur, and then from the old market to new market, a radical change happens. And those top sellers in the old market will no longer sell in the new market. So if you stick with the declining products, then you won't be doing well. So you must capture the emerging demand in the new market quickly. And you'll have to focus on how to expand the emerging demand. That is more productive. Looking at the past example, these are home appliances. When the appliance is launched at the beginning, the sales are very small, but gradually the consumers' demands are captured, and with the advancement of technology, the sales increased significantly. So the supply and demand had the good interaction in a way. So as you can see at the beginning, sales were not picking up, but then later on the hysteresis curve was formed. This is introduced in economics textbook. And this is another example of hysteresis curve. Usually, various products go through the hysteresis curve. You can learn that in Economics 101. So the demands are changing now, and these new products that are being demanded today are still in the early stage. But just like the home appliances that we saw on the previous slide, if we capture the demand of the market properly, then these new products will go through the hysteresis curve and demand will rapidly increase. So we should not stick with the old and unperforming products. We should capture the new demand and expand the market rapidly. That is what we need to do. And from now on, I'm going to talk about my personal opinion. So in the world after COVID-19, the digital business model in the manufacturing will grow in the following three markets. And I would very much like to hear from other panelists on their view. I believe that the first market that will be growing is maintenance market, the second is customization market, and the third is remote working market. The first one is the maintenance market. In recent years, the maintenance service has been gaining a lot of attention, and I think there are two reasons for that. Because in the past, the manufacturing industry was focused on the production and sales. But as I showed you earlier in the hysteresis curve, if we only look at the production practice, then the market becomes saturated very quickly. These products on the market, these manufacturing markets are saturated in many areas. And so it's difficult to gain profit just by manufacturing something. So manufacturing companies need to find another revenue stream. And the second reason is the following. We have AI, IoT, 5G. These advanced technologies are emerging in the society. So maintenance work can be achieved using these technologies. Having said that, for manufacturing companies, the maintenance work is where the maintenance personnel would go to the site and rush over to the site and mend the machine that is broken. That is what was happening in the maintenance field. But that alone cannot form the maintenance market. So here we have a very good example. E-Factory from Mitsubishi Electric and Lumada from Hitachi. These systems are selling really well recently. And these are becoming the bread and butter for these companies. And they are maintenance service system. These can be put in place in an existing production line or machine. And by installing these systems, they can improve the operation ratio and they can ensure that machines will continue operating. So Lumada and E-Factory are selling well, and that shows that in the world, well, there are systems or there are needs to improve operation rate and keep the machines going. So the demand for these two systems demonstrates that need. And operation status data can also be integrated into big data, and this big data can be analyzed using AI. And based on the data, services are provided to customers. So this can be a very big revenue source for manufacturers. But in many manufacturing companies, including Moriseiki and Komatsu, these companies already have such system in their organization, but if they only focus on their own company, then they cannot create a big revenue stream. So in order to make the maintenance service profitable, you must collect as much data as possible in the form of big data. So not only focusing on your own group companies, you need to see the overseas companies, subsidiaries, affiliated companies. A vast amount of data and various data need to be collected and analyzed by AI. And by so doing, manufacturers can provide very sophisticated service. In the United States, this market is already seen as a potential market that will be profitable. And specialty companies are already being established. If Japan and Japanese companies don't do anything about this, then the manufacturers will continue to just manufacture products, and the data, the valuable data, will be captured by American companies, and the Japanese manufacturers may end up becoming just outsourcees. And this is the illustration. And the second point, the second market that has the potential to expand is the customization market. There are many needs. Until recently, many products were produced in mass production, responding to needs. But with the current technologies, we can customize and personalize products. And then by so doing, we can increase sales because we can create this new market. And the third market is remote work related market. As you saw in the COVID-19 pandemic, this can be an opportunity. And I believe that many companies will accelerate their work related to remote working. This is a survey conducted by Persol research and consulting company. It's a research company in employment. And the other day, this company carried out a survey on the teleworking in the COVID-19 pandemic. And the result is shown on the slide. The important point is that 79.3% of women in their 20s want to continue working from home even after COVID-19 pandemic. Once we experience teleworking, many of us want to continue working from home. You can see that from the result. This is by occupation. The corporate planning division, 85.3%, and in general affairs and human resources, 77.5% of people said that they wanted to continue working from home. So depending on the departments or divisions of the company, quite high percentage of people want to continue working from home. So in some way, I believe that remote working will continue to take root in the society. And digital technologies related to remote work will be highly demanded. And the related market will also rapidly grow. 2020 Capital Investment Survey for Japan. This result shows that for all the industries, the investment went down by 1.2% versus the previous year. It is due to COVID-19, so the overall capital investment is going down. But if we only look at the IT investment, the investment amount is going up by 15.8%. And if we only focus on IT investment in manufacturing industry, it is up by 20.3%. This is record high. So the companies in manufacturing industry are thinking that they need to continue digitalizing their operation. So this is my conclusion. So just like COVID-19, when the behaviors of humans and companies change drastically, some markets may be lost, but at the same time, new ones may emerge. So the declining market, it will be lost. So those products in this declining market should be abandoned. We should go to a new market. We need to identify the new emerging market and rapidly develop and expand the market. And that new market will be definitely a huge market, and digital technology will determine which one will be superior. That is all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Iwamoto. So disappearing markets, I believe we have heard about that in the past several months. And digital transformation of business models, how do we capture that? Today, we have heard that there are things that the company level has to handle, and there are some things that people have to do in their everyday lives, for example, how they work. So the business model transformation has to happen over a very wide area. I believe that is what you have been saying. Thank you very much for your presentation. Now, as a wrap-up to the presentation part, I have this to say. We had 4 presentations from Professor Anderl. We have looked at the pandemic and the Industry 4.0. We have heard about the most recent relationship between the two. Professor Kimura talked about digital society and the model-based design. What are the conditions for that? But I believe he said that the mindset part is most important. I believe that was the strong message we heard. Professor Gries talked about the customer experience-based digital transformation. It has to be customer-driven. And that should be the starting point for thinking about digital transformation. And he has given examples from Germany. And he gave a very insightful presentation. And the final one, Mr. Iwamoto, talked about new business models or business model changes for digital society. He has given us some statistics and looked at it from the company level all the way up to the individual level, and about all the business model changes that are necessary. I believe he also gave a very clear message on that. Thank you very much for all 4 presentations. Now, based on the key messages, we would now like to move on to the panel discussion part. I will be serving as the moderator, and the 4 presenters will be the panelists. So we will pose questions and have the panelists answer the questions. And also people who are watching through YouTube will be sending in their questions. And based on those questions, we will continue with our discussion. Now, before the panel discussion, as a starter, I'd like to first say a few things. Now, the 4 people gathered today, and myself, actually on July 2nd, we actually published a joint statement named The Manufacturing Policy in the World of Post-COVID-19. The goal is not post-COVID-19. It is about a more resilient with COVID-19 society. Unfortunately, looking at the past, usually it took 3 to 9 years for the economy to recover after pandemics or crises. But with digital technology, we want to make sure that we rebuild society in a more accelerated manner. And that's what we agreed upon. And based on that agreement, I would like to point out 3 things that come up in the joint statement. Statement number 1, the digital transformation of society should be accelerated from the era of a cost-competitive paradigm to a new era of value-added and risk-competitive paradigm. We want to build sustainable and resilient economies and a sustainable and resilient society. So that's statement number 1. Statement number 2 says that for this, the design policy of products, productions, services, value networks, and supply chain system in society must be discussed and promoted as international cooperation for new value creation and value chains. And the third and last statement says about the actual design. The future design shall be synchronized while taking into account not only national differences in Japan and Germany, but also differences according to each company's needs. We want to highlight that joining the different perspectives of our distinguished technological cultures will lead to new and forerunning insights and solutions. So that's the joint statement that we've published. So we hope to have a discussion centered around these 3 statements. And once again, we will ask for your opinion. Now, there are 3 questions that I wish to ask.
The first question is shown on the slide. As you can see here, and as we discussed today, we need to change from cost competitive to value-added and risk-competitive structure. It is easy to say, but difficult to do. And it's a very difficult task with a profit-seeking social structure. And on top of that, environmental issues cannot be ignored. And many argue that recovery from COVID-19 needs to be green recovery. People in the world are talking about the need for green recovery. And I believe that everyone is aware of that. So what should we specifically consider to achieve both risk competitive and green recovery? This is the first question. First, from German side, I would like to hear some opinions. Professor Gries, can you respond to this question, please? Please unmute your mic.
Thank you very much. The consumer wants to have more sustainable products. There is a Friday for Future, for example, movement and other political movements. But it must be said that the consumer, on the other hand, there is a saying of thinking green and acting gray. At the end of the day, the price premium is not much for those products. So, and if you produce them in smaller amounts, more individual, the price of production is higher. For example, changing from polymers to biopolymers, my estimate is that the factor is 2 and 3 times in the material price. And many customers are not aware of what has been done already in the manufacturing chain. So there is a higher need for information at the point of sale. And also there is a different kind of value chain, because if you just push it into the value chain, then you will definitely not, you will fall out at the first price negotiations. Only if you have a direct link, more or less direct link, to the consumer, then you can have a sales success, although the production costs are tremendously higher. And there's of course a need for digitalization, because typically a consumer has not at the point of sale, but maybe before or after, he digs into some information and he wants to get information about the green attitude of the value chain or the production without any barriers. So this, of course, needs digitalization, blockchain models, and whatever.
Thank you very much. So, Professor Gries, in your presentation, I believe you took up the example of Adidas. For example, in Adidas PR, do they say that they are using recycled material and that's a value added? I believe they are at the forefront from that, and they are pricing it based on that value. So we see these new business models being created in Germany. So is this a business model in the green? We believe that it is a business model in green recovery, and we want to learn from that in Japan.
Definitely it is. If you talk with people, not only from Adidas, but also last Friday, I had a long telephone conversation with the people from IKEA, which also say that within the next 1 or 2 years, all products will be sustainable with a less carbon footprint and so on and so on. So there is a strong trend, especially driven by the large brands, consumer brands. But it is, of course, a luxury problem or premium strategy, because if you collect fish nets and then recover the polyamide, you will never ever, because it's a niche product, you will never ever cover 100% of the polyamide market. Although the polyamide technology already, if you produce polyamide 6, you have already in every plant a recovery plant. So the basic technology is there. What is needed, for my understanding, if you want to go into defossilization, is on the one hand recycling, on the other hand bio-based, on the third hand carbon capture usage. And if you go to recycling, the main driving factor for recycling and against plastic pollution is discipline of the customer. And I really appreciate always when I be in Japan that nobody throws anything away. Nobody. You take your waste home, and then, of course, it's much more easier to recycle. If you go to Germany or maybe India or Southern Europe, everybody throws the plastic bottles away. And also in Germany at the moment, what you can see, the face masks. You see a lot of face masks just flying around in the environment. And of course, all those materials cannot be recycled, of course. So a discipline in returning the after-use material, post-consumer waste, is the key for recycling technology. And the second thing is, this is not new. So recycling of material has been a part of human mankind. And even for man-made materials, in the 70s, when we had the first oil crisis, in the 90s, in the 20s, in the zeros, we had large-scale national projects, for example, Carpet Recycling Europe, which failed because they always were looking for a national or even European approach in order to get the necessary money to feed back the materials at economic of scales of 200 tons per day plant, and so on and so on. There is a need for new technologies which are decentralized, maybe community-based. Otherwise, it also will not work. So there has to be a change in the way of to get the post-consumer waste and then to treat it more locally than in large national or European projects.
Thank you very much. In Japan, the business model transformation was talked about a lot in Mr. Iwamoto's presentation today. So can you respond to this question? Yes, risk competitiveness. I have one idea on that. To be risk competitive in normal times, companies will have to reserve some money to prepare for social shock. That is my recommendation and proposal. And in national security and defense, this is already put in practice. So I think that companies should also do this. In national defense and security, and the government prepares for some impact that may occur every once in decades or centuries. And in case a war breaks out, and if the country loses the war, the country may have to go out of the world. So of course, the government makes a lot of investment to avoid that. And we can put this and apply this idea to companies. Companies can make investment into preparation, and they can invest a part of their profit in preparation for emergency in normal times. And then they can be ready when a social shock occurs, and they can recover quickly. And in the long run, the total profit may not be impacted. The total profit may even be higher if they make the investment in advance. So to be cost competitive as well, this practice may allow companies to maximize their profit in the end. And the next, on green investment, in the society, some companies have caused some pollutions. But on the other hand, the green investment amount is increasing. And at the same time, the profit of companies is not going down. It means that the common sense around green investment is changing, and the need for green investment is also increasing. So depending on the times, green investment must be made. And by so doing, companies have yielded profit. So green investment has led to profit. And as we saw in the Adidas example, 10 or 20 years from now, the green investment will probably be a standard. And today, you can be a pioneer in making green investment. And if we do so, then right after the investment is made, then profit may plunge temporarily, but 10 to 20 years from now, the companies will be deemed as a pioneering company. And then consumers may evaluate such company highly, which may lead to the increase in profit. So in the end, companies may be able to gain even bigger profit from making green investment. That is my idea. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Green investment, I believe that is a very important concept. And for companies, company defense in peaceful times. COVID-19 is something that only happens once in 100 years, it is often said. So we are in an emergency situation. But how do we prepare for such an event? I believe that is a very difficult management discussion. And how to make that decision, it's very difficult. Now, next on the modeling part, I'd like to move on to the second question here. Today, we have heard in the presentation about social design, which is very important. Social infrastructure, designing how we live, and also design for commercial activities. A digital design is necessary in all these different areas. And I believe this is truly a significant challenge. But in the world post-COVID-19, what kind of scheme and structure should we work on in order to shape the world of post-COVID-19? Once again, I'd like to call upon our panelists on this second question. First, I'd like to go to Professor Anderl. Can we have your answer?
Yes, thank you very much for this very interesting question. As we concluded in all our presentations, digitalization has a very strong impact on all parts of our life. And living design is very important, and it is dedicated in particular to the enormous amount of data we are creating in future, and in particular in the post-COVID-19 era. Therefore, we have to structure and to shape the data creation, but also the data storing, archiving methods, taking into account security, privacy, and also what we call sovereignty. So we have a very strong understanding that data sovereignty has a top priority in our European environment, and of course also in our German environment. And therefore, the initiative, which is called Gaia X here in Europe, is so important. And if you take into account the situation which we have today with the pandemic problem, then if we are tested, of course, data, personalized data is being created. And of course, also this data is being processed So we are aggregating the data, and we are drawing a lot of conclusions about this data. Of course, it's dedicated to our daily life, but it will also be dedicated to our business life. And therefore, the data protection approaches are so important. But data protection can only be successful if we have managed to gain sovereignty about our data. If we don't have the sovereignty, then we will have severe problems in managing our data. And therefore, my answer to your question, what kind of scheme and structure should we work on in order to shape the world of post-COVID-19, creating data sovereignty. In our case, it's the approach of Gaia X. So this would be my answer to your question.
アンダル先生、ありがとうございました。いわゆる
Thank you very much, Dr. Anderl. In the digitalized society, the explosive amount of data is generated, and it is a very important issue to think about, which is how to structure the data and how to control the data is also very important. First, I believe that your message is that the rules must be established globally. Now, Dr. Kimura, can we have your answer to this question? Yes, I would like to touch upon two items. First, about data. Regarding the social design, the data needs to be at the center, and in order to transform the society, the data contents are important. And Dr. Anderl talked about the mechanism and scheme, but what I would like to touch upon is related to the first question. We have accumulation of various data from manufacturing, process, and daily activities. There are some data sets that are required to these activities. But for sustainability and green recovery, we must also incorporate such data that is relevant to green recovery and sustainability. Such data is lacking now. So green recovery will be relevant to competitiveness. We have to validate data and show to the people that green recovery is important to maintain competitiveness. We have to use data to convince people, but such data is not published sufficiently. We must incorporate such data and publish data. So that is an important point. For example, LCA, if you want to do this accurately, we need more data. And EV, electric vehicles. How eco-friendly are EVs? In order to show that, then we must present data in order to convince people and show to people that EVs are truly eco-friendly. And secondly, not only in manufacturing industry, the society is changing. And in order to transform society as a whole, we have to look at various revolutions. We can't focus on just one revolution. For example, you can make the production process in the factory efficient, but if you only look at the factory, it's not enough. You have to look at the supply chain, the entire chain. Everything needs to be connected. Everything must be looked at. Because you might be able to do something, but others may not. That was the excuse that we had, but we can't use that excuse anymore. We need this social engagement and raise awareness so that the various paradigm shifts can be carried out in tandem. We can't only focus on one single paradigm shift. So in order to achieve that, we need to establish a good scheme and a structure. So we need to have a big vision, but still we need to start focusing on some small things that we can work on. And then we can iterate the collaboration process to achieve the entire transformation. And also, I think that that's the basis for green recovery to take root.
Thank you very much. So the explosive amount of data, but then it's very difficult to get the data that we need, green recovery data. Is not really being used because it's very difficult to identify the necessary data. But now looking back, how we utilize goods as well as social infrastructure in the past 5 years or so, we have heard about IoT, but even if we don't call it IoT, social media using cell phones, people are posting how they're using certain products or where they are and how they are feeling because they are there. So social media and personal message sending is now being done around the world, and that data source could be utilized. But how do we put that into the social system? As Professor Kimura said, we have to start from where we can in order to retrieve the data that is necessary so that we can build a digital society. Different sectors have to collaborate together in order to do that. Now, I believe Gaia X of Germany, including the data sovereignty issue, probably is key in this. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to turn to questions from our audience. I believe this is from a Japanese viewer. Is asking Professor Anderl. So you have talked about data sovereignty, but this is a question about resilience against pandemics. You said that people need to be aware of resilience, but do you have any examples of this being done in the German manufacturing industry? So, Professor Anderl, do you have any examples from Germany of companies dealing with resilience?
There are a couple of examples, and these examples are based on the implementation of Industrie 4.0 approaches in a manufacturing environment. And what is very interesting to see that Industrie 4.0 approaches, they are substituting traditional, more or less physically based integration methods of, for instance, machines in product lines. And the substitution is based on a digital connection of the machines in product lines, which creates much more flexibility. And then it's interesting to see that you are pretty much prepared to compensate, for instance, a supplier who is not able to supply the parts to the production line. And you can much better switch to an alternative supplier than just to wait for the supply of the parts by the supplier which is not able to provide the parts. So the flexibility is really a very strong issue to create resilience. And this is very important because otherwise the production line will stand still. And there are many cases in German industry which are similar, and they are really targeting the resilience. The same belongs to the people. What's happening if an expert team in your production is infected with COVID-19 and the whole manufacturing has to go to quarantine? Then the production line again has severe problems unless you have alternative expert teams that can take over their jobs. So there are many examples for resilience from the German manufacturing industry.
ありがとうございます。我
Thank you
々
very
にも
much. Also in Japan, as you saw in the video, resiliency must be considered. In the supply chain, if one factory needs to suspend its production for some reason, in Japan, we experienced the Great East Japan earthquake in 2011, and then the supply chain for cars was disrupted in Tohoku region. And so because of that, I believe that serious discussion took place in Japan about improving resilience. So resilience is commanding a lot of attention in Japan. This time, against COVID-19, what kind of resilience was employed to tackle the pandemic in Germany? I think that many people in Japan are quite interested. That's why this question probably came up from the member of the audience. And in Japan-Germany communication, we should share our practice about resilience in the future world. We want to continue the discussion in the future.
Yes.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much. And this will be the last question to the panelists. This is also a very difficult task. But as a last question, I'm going to ask all the panelists the same question. It's a very big theme. What should Germany and Japan do as the next action to shape the affluent world of post-COVID-19? So what will be the next action, urgent action, in collaboration between two countries? So this is the last question, and I will ask everyone to make a closing remark by responding to this question. So, Dr. Anderl, can you start?
Yes, of course. I have two answers to this question. Germany and Japan is collaborating very strongly on an expert level. For instance, taking into account the collaboration of the Robot Revolution Initiative in Japan and the Plattform Industrie 4.0 in Germany. What could also happen, however, is to strengthen this collaboration and also to establish, for instance, bi-national research projects. I mentioned the 2+2 projects between the two governments, or funded by the two governments, involving both industry and also science. And I could pretty much believe that if we are setting up a couple of 2+2 projects in this direction, for instance, clarifying the approaches of resilience, clarifying the projects of green recovery, and so forth, then I think we can strongly contribute to strengthen the collaboration between Japan and Germany, in particular with respect to the post-COVID-19 era. So, strengthen the collaboration and involving the government, setting up research projects, bilateral research projects, for instance, based on the 2+2 approach. Again, 2+2 means from each country, you are involving a partner from science and a partner from industry. And in total, then there are 4 partners on the table, and they are working on a research question, to solve a research question. Yeah, that's.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much for that. So, research project. Yes, indeed, we need to start up research projects. But last year, Japan and Germany together with HighTech in Germany, we had the industry, academia get together to talk about people and machines, and such research projects, as Professor Anderl says, not just with the academia, but the industry together and between the two countries should focus on creating a rich and affluent world post-corona. And I hope that will come into fruition. Now, Professor Kimura, can we have your answer to this question? Yes, I'd like to add to what we heard from Professor Anderl. Japan and Germany especially has been focusing on manufacturing, and we have been leading the world in technology. So these two countries coming together should be responsible for global sustainability and send out a message, a strong message to the world. I believe that is the responsibility of these two countries. With COVID-19, I believe people are trying to localize more, trying to center things around the regions. But when we think about the whole world, we need to have a win-win situation together with the developing world, which means we need to have an open world. And Japan and Germany, which has been leading the way, even under COVID-19, we need to continue our collaboration even stronger. More specifically, as we've heard, global logistics and also material recycling for green recovery and data also. We need to think about how we share data, and that would be important for the two countries, and I believe that's something we need to do for the world. In order to do that, the academia, the Science Council of Japan, and you have HighTech in Germany, but these organizations should collaborate, and there are schemes for that, and also RRI and PI 4.0 should collaborate. And we also need to involve individual industries. It's difficult to set up such a structure, but Japan and Germany has been trying to do that. I believe we do see a path that we should follow, and I believe now is the time to do that. And so I'd like to propose that and end my comment. Thank you.
So in order to form an open world, Japan and Germany must be leaders of the world. And with that sense of responsibility, how can we collaborate in order to achieve green recovery? That is the question that we should continue asking ourselves in the future. In the last few years, Germany and Japan have exchanged opinion on various themes. So we believe that we have already laid groundwork. So going forward, we need research activities involving both industry, academia, and government. That, I believe, is the next action. Dr. Kimura, thank you very much. Dr. Gries, can we have your answer to the question number 3?
Yeah, I would like to follow what Professor Anderl and Professor Kimura had said. We need some ignition sparks, like 2+2 projects. And of course, those projects shall be collaborative, industry plus academia, like in those Adidas projects and others. And then, of course, those calls shall not only include technology, but also shall be value chain oriented, supply chain oriented, and take also in consideration the different cultural backgrounds in order to really have an international benefit. And then, of course, if the projects are starting, we say in Germany, do good things and talk about. And since Japanese-German friendship is now almost 150 years, very intensive, there are a lot of networks like RRI, Plattform Industrie for Zero, NA Engineering Academy Japan, and HighTech, German Science and Innovation House, STC Forum, and so on. I think networks are pretty much enough, so we don't need new networks, but just use those projects and distribute the success stories in all those networks which have been working since many years. Thank you very much.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much. So, as you say, value. How do we approach value? Not just the manufacturers, but also the consumers will also need to have a mindset change, a transformation in value. And for that, as Professor Gries said, and that's something that everybody should do in this open world. But of course, we have to consider the historical, cultural differences, the background. So the background may be different, but we are aiming towards the same goal. That mindset is very important. And we hope that we can have that mindset as Japan and Germany collaborates together. Thank you very much. Now, finally, Mr. Iwamoto, can you answer this final question? Well, even before COVID-19, we have been talking about the fourth industrial revolution, and digitalization was progressing. And that's where COVID-19 struck. And companies around the world are trying to accelerate digitalization so that we can recover the economy, which was just pressed. So digitalization will be key in post-COVID-19. In the United States, you have GAFA, which just handles data, but doesn't handle manufacturing itself. They have been successful, and also we don't see that happening in Germany or in Japan. But I believe both countries will have to think like GAFA, but maybe we won't see that happen in Japan or Germany, because in the center of our two countries' economy, we had manufacturing. So digitalization accelerated in the manufacturing sector will be the path for the two countries going forward. So if the two countries are to collaborate, it will be to accelerate digitalization in the manufacturing sector. Maybe by cooperating, we will see acceleration of digitalization rather than doing it alone in each country. And I believe that will serve the interest of both countries.
Thank you very much. So digital transformation in manufacturing, that is the common challenge for Japan and Germany. Not only the digital transformation, the positive ones, Germany and Japan have the same challenge and issues such as declining population and aging of society, environmental issues. There are various social issues. They are common to both countries. So Japan and Germany share these challenges. So how can manufacturing industry digitally transform themselves? As we struggle, we must find the optimal solution there. Mr. Iwamoto, thank you very much. It's now time to close the session. Today, we talked about how manufacturing should be to respond to post-COVID-19. We invited 4 panelists and had a discussion on this topic. Dr. Anderl, Dr. Kimura, Dr. Grease, and Mr. Iwamoto, thank you very much for such active discussion.
Thank you. Arigato.
So, in place of a closing remark, I would like to introduce tomorrow's schedule. From 5 p.m. Japan time, we will have Japan-Germany Expert Forum. You can go to the RRI website for the information on the streaming video. So please join us tomorrow once again. So we have covered all the program today. Those members of the audience through YouTube, thank you very much for joining us today. This concludes today's session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Arigato.